Hello readers, I'm Amy and I'm your nonfiction feminist. Today I've decided to go ahead and do a spring book haul. I'll probably be doing a book haul every season. I'm trying not to buy so many books because I have a lot of traveling going on this year, but I'm a booktuber for a reason and I love books and I buy a lot of them. So here we are. I'm going to start with the book depository that I bought some books from like 2 or 3 months ago, very beginning of spring. A lot of the books here in this book haul I have already read. Either I got my own editions of them or I've read them since getting them a couple of months ago, so I'll kind of let you know as we go on. So, for the book depository, that is one of my larger piles. I have these books. It was classics, as you might be able to tell. These ones are the modern classics. I got Perfume by Patrick Suskind. I absolutely adored this book. Couldn't stand the thought of only ever reading it from the library, so went ahead and got my own copy. I do. Yeah, it's told from a villain's perspective. I love the villain perspective. I don't think we get villain perspectives often enough. And I loved this book. Your tail is in the way. I had tried reading Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. It wasn't really my thing. It's very stream of consciousness. I do want to try it again. I heard from someone on Instagram that I might like Orlando better, so I went ahead and got Orlando. I do have a thing about movie covers, but this is a movie cover that I actually really, really like. If you're doing movie covers, this is what they should look like. Not the other stuff that we end up getting. Note for publishers and cover designers. Anais Nin, I think is how you say her name. Delta of Venus. It's an author that I'd heard of. I hadn't read her yet. This looked really interesting. I think it's supposed to be more of an erotica type thing. So classic erotica. That'll be interesting. I also eventually would like to get Marquis de Sade's books. I did start one of his books and it was a very odd mix of porn and philosophy. I'm not quite sure that it mixed very well, but it was a very interesting read. So hopefully in the next couple of years I can start collecting some of those and let you know what I think. That smack scared him a little. Next up I have Vladimir Nabokov and Lolita. I have tried reading Lolita previously. It was a couple of years ago. I didn't totally love it. I want to try it again. I'd like to have my own edition because these are the kind of books that I love giving my opinion about, where it does have like a sexual aspect to it, and there are a lot of booktubers that I think most booktubers don't really review books that have sexual aspects to them. It's not something I'm afraid of. It's something that I studied a lot in college. I took like every sex education class that I could possibly get my hands on. I worked in an adult store. It was my thing. It's still kind of my thing, so I'd love to give my opinion on these kind of books. Then I have Arthur Miller's The Crucible. I read this in high school. I loved it. I reread it recently. The beginning was a little bit slow for me, a little boring, but it got really good again, so there's that. Sitting on my floor is not the most comfortable thing for me. And here's my wire. There we go. George Orwell's Animal Farm. I've started 1984 a couple of times. I didn't like it. I heard Animal Farm is told in a very different way, so I went ahead and read this. I really, really enjoyed it. It is a very different speed from 1984. At this point, I don't know that I'll ever read 1984. It's just not my thing. I think it's really boring when I start it. But Animal Farm I enjoyed, and it's really got a lot to say. Stop playing with my phone cord. This cat, I swear. There he is. Say hello, kitty. Okay. Are we back? We're back. Okay. Next Next up, John Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men. This is another reread for me. I read it in high school. I loved it. Very powerful short story. Yeah, enjoyed it, reread it, loved it. Evelyn Waugh, I usually say Evelyn, everyone's saying Evelyn, so I'm going to say Evelyn. Evelyn Waugh's Vile Bodies. Haven't really heard much about this author. I've been hearing more recently by watching a lot of classics, booktubers. I started this one day and I put it down because I was really in a slump whenever I started it. I do want to try again with this eventually. It had a cool book cover, it had a cool premise, it looked interesting. I was on a bit of a book buying binge because I knew I was going to try and do a low buy, so of course I did a high buy in preparation for my low buy. So that's why I have so many classics right now. Next we have Mary Wollstonecraft's A Vindication of the Rights of Women. This sounds like something I should totally read, as you may or may not be able to tell from my username down below. Yeah, this looks awesome. It's a lot bigger than I thought it would be. I don't know how interesting of a read it's going to be, but it still looks like something I should probably have on my shelf. And last, there is The Tenant of Wildfell Hall. I got the really nice edition of this and read it, finished it a couple days ago. I've already ruined the cover, had an incident with some chalk marker at work, and didn't realize that the cover would rub right off. So, note to self, if you spill something on these books, don't try to clean it. Just leave it. It'll just make it worse. Lesson learned. This book deserved better than it got. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I've been wanting to read the Brontes for a while. I am really nervous because I hear Wuthering Heights can be a really tough read, and Jane Eyre is a really long book. I am put off by really long books, but I do try to read them. So I decided I would start with Anne Bronte. I read Agnes Grey a couple of months ago. I really enjoyed it. I also enjoyed this. Anne Bronte is a little religious and moralistic for my taste, but they were still really good reads. I did order some books that'll be in my summer book haul. I got Villette and Shirley by Charlotte Bronte. I would like to read those before I start my copy of Jane Eyre, which is this bright yellow, beautiful book right here. Like, how gorgeous is this? I would love more editions like this. Yeah, I'm going to read her other books before I read Jane Eyre, and then I'll finish off the Brontes with Wuthering Heights. I know Emily Bronte also has some poetry. I'm not a huge poetry person. The poetry that I've found that I've liked has not been, like, traditional poetry. So we'll see how that goes. So that is it for my book depository book haul. Next up, that should go over there. I have these separated in piles by where I bought them. I will go ahead and do the church book sale. There's a couple of church book sales in my area. One of them was extremely religious to the point that made me uncomfortable. There were book titles at that book sale that, like, I wish did not exist. That's a topic for another day. This church book sale has a lot more, like, not up-to-date reads, but, like, Stephen King, Michael Crichton, the stuff that I really, really enjoy. So, I found a hardback copy of Lilac Girls. I got this for, like, $1. It was awesome. I've seen this book around a lot lately. It features, it's a story on World War II. I find World War II really interesting. Most of my history up on the shelf up here, most of it roughly is World War II based. I find that stuff, like, really, really interesting. So yeah, I'm gonna try Lilac Girl, see how that goes. The one thing that I don't love about this, and it's not this book in particular, but I went to Barnes & Noble the other day and did not buy anything, and I saw at least 6 books with almost this exact cover and not one of them was written by the same author, and that's really annoying because like you need to change up your book covers. 6 books with the same cover, not by the same author, not with the same topic. That's boring and boring. Anyways, rest of the church book sale books. I have Michael Crichton's 5 Patients. I think this is actually one of his nonfiction books. I have a lot of Michael Crichton in my little bookshelf tour in my DIY bookshelf video. I forgot to show you guys the half of a bookshelf that I have in the hallway. I will show you that at the end of this video, I suppose. But I have a nice collection of Michael Crichton books. I have not read any of his nonfiction yet. I haven't read Timeline either. I like more of his like science fiction, not so much the stuff about Vikings and timelines and stuff. Loved Jurassic Park. It's one of my top favorite books of his ever. Micro creeped me out, but yeah, 5 Patients looks interesting. It's kind of a case study on 5 different patients, as you can tell by the cover. So there's that. I have started reading Toni Morrison recently. I read Beloved or not Beloved. I read, what is it? The Bluest Eye. I read The Bluest Eye. I loved it. Tar Baby, I didn't really get, but I've heard great things about Beloved, so I got a copy of Beloved. This is not my favorite edition of this book, but I have Tar Baby in this edition, so might as well stick with editions if I find them. I listened to Watership Down on audiobook through the library, adored it, got my own copy. Again, this is like 50 cents. So, I never read this before like 2 months ago. I had a friend in high school who absolutely adored this book. I just never got around to reading it and listened to the audiobook, thought it was awesome. This is a fantasy book. It's not like a typical fantasy book, but I'm counting it as fantasy because I don't read a lot of fantasy, and Google says it's fantasy, so there. It counts. But it's about rabbits. The only thing that I didn't like about this book was the women's roles, or the female bunnies roles. They're basically just breeders. That was annoying. But I still really enjoyed it. Next, I have Stephen King writing as Richard Bachman. I have not read any of his Richard Bachman books, but Thinner looks like an interesting story. You have a guy... Gosh, what was the... It's one of those that just has, like, writing from the actual book on the back, but he's, like, losing weight, and then he keeps losing weight, and he doesn't know why. So that looked like a good story. Ian McEwan. I love Ian McEwan. I've read a couple of his now. I have this edition of his books. I've heard really great things about Saturday from A Book Olive, and we both really enjoyed on Chesil Beach, so I think I'm going to enjoy Saturday. Hopefully I'll get to it in the next couple months. I think he's just a beautiful writer. He's one of those, he's a little more flowery in some of his writing, or at least Atonement was more flowery, but I love that book. On Chesil Beach was really interesting because it was just like about these 2 days of a couple on their honeymoon. Nutshell wasn't my favorite. It was a Macbeth retelling, but I think the angle that he took of a fetus was really, really interesting. So excited to start reading Saturday. And lastly, I got Rose Madder by Stephen King. So the Stephen King books behind me are actually almost all my husband's books, and the ones that I've bought have mostly been for him, just to continue his collection. Neither of us have read this. I'm hoping a lot of these books we can read together. Not that he reads a lot of physical books anymore. But this one is, I believe this is the one about an abused woman who escapes from her husband. So, and I tend to like his books more when they're not filled with 24 characters. So we'll see how this goes. I'm actually thinking of doing try a chapter tag for Stephen King. And Hillary at A Melted Books would like us to go through the Stephen King shelf, so I'll do that sometime. I might wait on those until more like August, September, October-ish, because it seems like more of a fall thing. But I will do those. I think that'll be really, really fun. So that, and excuse me for the sniffling and odd voice, I'm still sick. That is it for my church book haul. Yeah, there's a couple of churches that have book sales around town. That's really awesome. I have one book that I got from A Few Books More. It's a local used bookstore. Now, it's not like $2 a book used bookstore. The guy actually buys nice used editions from places and then sells him in his store, so they're like cheaper than Barnes and Noble but more expensive than a book sale. And I found Stephen King's Dolores Claiborne, which is another book I've been interested in reading, not so much because of the premise, but it's just it's a book I hear about from time to time. I think it looks really interesting. I don't know why I think it looks interesting, I just do. It's like Dolores Claiborne, it's just the name of a woman, like Rose Madder, and I'm like, I want to know who this person is. So, yeah, I'm going to be continuing my journey with Stephen King. I didn't love Stephen King whenever I started him, and then I found some books that I did love. That's a nice thing with Stephen King, is he's got a lot of different styles, a lot of different genres that he writes in. He's famous for his horror, but he's not strictly a horror author. So I'm slowly finding my place with his books. Then I will do another Stephen King book. Almost all of the books on this shelf, at least as far as I'm aware, like, since my husband and I have been together, I haven't paid more than like $3 for any of these. And then came along Pet Sematary. As you can tell, this is an original edition. This is the most money I have ever paid for a book in my life, and that counts enormous college textbooks, I think. It's actually been a while since I've got my college textbooks, but I got most of those on Kindle, so they weren't very expensive. I listened to Pet Sematary on audiobook. I thought it was amazing. My husband did not have his own copy yet, so got on Amazon, found one of the cheaper, super expensive Stephen King books. This was like $65 to get this cover, but for as much as I enjoyed it, this is like one of the only Pet Sematary covers that I actually like. I think this artwork is amazing. Having grown up doing a lot of artwork myself, I'm pretty picky about my book artwork whenever there's different editions. So I had to get the original cat version because this is awesome. I think they should just like re-release this cover. I think that'd be really awesome. Yeah. The artist did a good job with this. I already picked those ones. Alright, as I've said before, I do volunteer for my local Friends of the Library. I said that in one of these past videos. And volunteering, I not only go to a lot of their book sales, but like I help organize a lot of the donated books. I haven't done that recently because I've been super busy. But I have picked up these books, nice little collection. I read The Power earlier this year. I thought it was really awesome. I'm getting a nice collection of feminist dystopias. Again, I'll show you in my quick little mini shelf hallway book tour at the end of this video. Yeah, this was a really good one. You have a couple of different, I should probably keep holding this if I'm going to keep talking about it. Got a couple of different perspectives. What I actually loved most about it wasn't the story, though. It's that it starts and ends with a series of letters being passed between an author and his editor. I want to say editor. It could be publisher, but I think it's the editor. And it's basically switched the roles of males and females. It goes into like if men were in charge of the world, they wouldn't be nearly as violent as women being in charge of the world because they don't have kids that they're trying to protect and all of this stuff. And it just really, it turned society on its head in the discussions and the letters at the beginning and the end. And that's what I really loved about this. It wasn't so much the story itself, which was good, as it was the letters between the author and the editor. That really, like, solidified this book for me. Then I found Book of 1,000 Days. I read this like a couple weeks after I got it. This was a book that I had started in like middle school, and it's always a story that stuck with me, but I never remembered finishing it. So I see this at the book sale and I'm like, oh, I have to get this book. Like, I have to know how it ended. And I actually really enjoyed it. It is, I think, a middle grade book, but even though I don't read middle grade, I still really enjoyed it. It's like really strong female characters. It does explore depression a little bit. You have these women who are locked in a tower that's supposed to be for, I think, like 7 years. They do end up escaping. There's a lot of political stuff that's gone on at home that they have to sort through. It's really, it was good. It was a nice adventure. I don't know, I wouldn't call it fantasy. It's more like historical fiction, maybe like a little bit fantasy. I was thinking it was actually a Rapunzel retelling of some kind, but it's actually, what was it, Maid Maleen, I think is what she said this book was based off of. Ends up I don't actually have that fairy tale on my shelf, so I'll have to Google that or something and find the original tale. But this is, it's a fairy tale retelling. So if you're into retellings, check out Book of 1,000 Days. Then we have The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. I read this for Mentalhealth-athon. I'll be going over it in my Mentalhealth-athon Wrap-Up, which will probably be 3 videos, because I've read, I think, over 12 books at this point, and whenever there's a huge wrap-up, I like watching videos that go over, like, that review or wrap up fewer books and, like, kind of break it up so you don't have this 30-minute video that you're watching. But I did enjoy this. I didn't like the voice. The autistic voice just wasn't something that I necessarily enjoyed reading. But it is a very well done book. It is like a 4-star book, even though I didn't like the voice. Like, it's just really well done. So if you're interested in autism and mental health books, would totally recommend this. I got Gillian Flynn's Dark Places. I did already have my own copy. It was a mass... Dude. My cat's on the window and he tipped over the Kleenex box, because he's an asshole like that. Anyways, I already have a mass paperback edition of this. This edition, while not exactly matching my Sharp Objects and Gone Girl editions, is like closer. So I went ahead and got it. Again, this was like $1 at the Friends of the Library, and I'll be donating the other one back to the Friends of the Library, where I think I originally got, or maybe I bought that one originally. I don't know, it's been a while. I got an edition that better matched my other editions, as one does from time to time. I also found The Witches by Stacy Schiff. Ends up I already have her book on Cleopatra. I actually got that over a year ago at a book sale and have not read it yet. But it's, as you can imagine, about Salem. I find Salem really interesting. I got The Crucible by Arthur Miller. I love learning more about Salem, so hopefully I can get through this. I did start it recently and wasn't like super into it. I think a lot of it is that I haven't read history lately, so I have to kind of get back into that writing style again. But I am interested in reading this. Hopefully I'll read this before a year has gone by. I found a copy of The Glass Castle. You might know this from the movie. It's a really well-known memoir. I haven't read it yet. Going to read it eventually. I'm reading a lot of memoirs lately. I finished Educated recently, which I have some thoughts on that. I'll talk about it during my wrap up. But yeah, this book is a lot smaller than I thought it would be, but we'll see how I like it. And lastly, I did not watch The Dark Crystal growing up, but I did watch it about a month or two ago with my husband, and then I found this paperback copy of the book, so I looked it up. The book was written from the movie. There are some movie, like, photos in it. I really enjoyed the movie. I have no idea what the book's going to be like. Books written from movies are usually not that great, but I had to pick this up anyways. So that is it for my Friends of the Library book sale. Little haul there. And I have one more section on this. That's just my new books. Ones that I bought new, largely from Amazon. Oh, wait, I have one more. This was from the book depository. It was in the wrong pile. Don't Look Now and Other Stories by Daphne du Maurier. I'm almost finished with this. I don't generally like short stories, but these are really good. So there it is with my last book for the book depository haul. Alright, Amazon and a little bit Barnes & Noble. The Collected Schizophrenias. Finished reading this for Mentalhealth-athon. We'll discuss it in my wrap-up. Wasn't quite what I thought it would be. Possibly Literate, I think is the name of the booktuber. Saw her review this book at one point, thought it looked really interesting, went ahead and got it from Mentalhealth-athon. Sparrow by Sarah Moon, also got this from Mentalhealth-athon. Really loved it. It's a YA and like depression book. We'll discuss it in my wrap-up. The Hobbit, I have my Lord of the Rings project video. I'll link that down below. I have not actually started reading these yet. I'm hoping to get to them in June because the Goodreads book challenge that I'm doing sets June as the reread month, and these will be rereads for me, so hopefully I'll get started on The Hobbit. I can release my vlog for that. If you want to know more about the project, again, it's linked below. Erotic Stories for Punjabi Widows. I'd been wanting to read this. It's about a woman who starts a writing group, and the women end up writing a lot of erotica. It sounded like exactly the kind of thing I would love to read. And I just didn't. I don't think I even got halfway through this, and I spent over a month trying to read this. I think it was the writing style. I could not get into this. I'd like to try it again, but thinking about trying it again just, like, doesn't feel good. So, I don't know. I just don't think it was written very well. I still can't put my finger on exactly what bothered me about this book, but it just, I don't know. I might or I might not try it again. I got Carmilla, so again, reading some classics booktubers. I think it's Lucy the Reader is who I was watching. I love Dracula. I love vampires, but I like the classic vampires, not Twilight, Vampire Academy, stuff like that. Dracula was awesome. Salem's Lot by Stephen King I need to give another try. Didn't love it. I'm going to try it again before I review it, and then I'll probably discuss it during, like, some Dracula video or something. Carmilla is another classic. It was actually written way before Dracula. It feels like it's got lesbian vibes, which is interesting for the time. It's like it's a novella. It was interesting. I don't know. Like, hints at a lot of things. There's not necessarily, like, a big discovery or anything like there was in Dracula. but it's a decent classic. And lastly, the Road to Nowhere series is a book series that I discovered at a local bookstore. I'm loving it. The last book was just released last month. I am going to reread the first two books for Jazzy June, which is my reread month. And then I'm going to read the third book and do a big review for all of them. And I love these, and you're just going to have to wait because I'm not going to tell you anything about it except that it's awesome. Here's a book series that doesn't get nearly enough attention. I found one book review on YouTube of the first book, and that's it. And that's a shame, because these are great. So that is it for the book haul. Let's see if I can do what so many booktubers do and get these in one stack in front of a camera. I don't think I'll be able to do it, but I have to try. Right? Gosh, I have a problem. At least most of these were not full price. Okay. There we go. All of the books. This is terrible. Okay. That's what I get for trying. Alright. Quick little book tour at the end of the hallway, because I forgot to do that in that one video I made. So here it is. The little kind of half bookshelf that I made at the end of my hallway. Obviously, I have my Harry Potter collection. These, except for that paperback 5th book, are ones that I've had since growing up. I'm sorry, I don't have the original paper covers anymore. I don't know where they went to. I was a kid when I got these. Like, don't bother me. Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. There's so many people who hate that book. I need to reread the series and reread that book before I decide again. Honestly, I liked it when I initially read it, but it had been a while since I'd read the series. So, I have Tales of Beetle the Bard and the Quidditch and Fantastic Beasts books. I have no interest in reading the new books. I have so many thoughts on J.K. Rowling right now. I'm not happy, I'll say that. A previous boss gave me most of the books on tape, which is when I initially started listening to audiobooks. That is Luna's Wand. That is my Marauder's Map. I have all of these so far released illustrated editions. They're absolutely gorgeous. Here is my women's dystopia or feminist dystopia collection. Red Clocks was awesome. Vox, I didn't love the writing style, but I loved the story. Future Home of the Living God was okay. Station 11 I have a review for. Handmaid's Tale was good. It's the first dystopia I ever read that I liked. It was really dark for me, but I did enjoy it. I don't watch the series. I've rewatched the first couple episodes a few times, but the series is just too dark for me. It makes me feel a little depressed, and I just don't think it's a good show for me to be watching emotionally. Fahrenheit 451 I enjoyed. I already told you I thought 1984 was boring. Brave New World, I struggled. And then I tried rereading 1984 when I was done with that, and that was just not the time to start that book, because it felt like I was punishing myself all over again. And here is my sci-fi shelf. About half of these are my husband's books, and half of these are mine. It's really these are all his books, and these are almost all mine. You can see my nice little Michael Crichton collection there. I think I need to reread some of his books, and then I'll probably do a Michael Crichton video sometime in the future. But yeah, there's that little mini book tour. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Now I have to clean up the disaster pile on the floor of my library. I hope you all have a wonderful day. I will be releasing those wrap-up videos, I think the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of June, so keep an eye out for those. And then I'm going to be quiet for like a week because I'm going on vacation. Finally. I might do a vacation vlog. I haven't decided yet. Like, subscribe, be my friend, because I'm awesome and you should be my friend. Yeah, have a beautiful day. Have a great weekend, I guess. Today's Thursday, it's the weekend. It's not my weekend because I'm working, but have a good weekend.